But
you're in Kathmandu?
Yes, I am in Kathmandu, and we are now live.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for coming on. I want to go ahead and introduce us before we get off and running in conversation. I'm Dane Dormio, and I am really pleased to be sharing this conversation with you today. My guest today is a widely recognized and accomplished expert in all things related to Qi Gong. He's been a specialized practitioner of herbology, acupuncture, and nutrition basically since before I was born. And I just want to go through the highlights of an introduction to at least map out the territory. So, Doctor of Oriental Medicine, lineage holder of the Longqing family style of Qigong, Florida licensed primary care physician, master's degree in biology, doctorate in sports medicine, author, speaker, teacher, lecturer, founder and director of multiple schools and programs, author of a total of 10 books on health and nutrition, dean of acupuncture at one college, professor at another, and guest lecturer at another, all acupuncture colleges. Local radio show producer, like Radio, old school, as well as your internet radio program, Roots 11, and a wildly popular YouTube channel. Current occupation, training and certifying practitioners of medical Qigong. Did I at least get the highlights, the high points in there?
You did very well, Dan. Thank you.
All right, great. I'm really pleased to be sharing with you this conversation with the one and only Dr. George. I'm really glad to be here too. It's really been a huge learning experience for me, and I know that you do a lot of interviews, and my hope is to get some new fresh material out of you. But obviously, with your background and your experience, there's a lot to dig into there. I'm curious about something that I noticed though. There was a 10-year gap between getting your bachelor's and master's degree. What were you doing in that time? Was that like a gap decade?
I was married for 9 years. I went through a painful divorce and depression and self-loathing and fear and doubt and uncertainty. And Qigong brought me out of that. So that was the one thing that I could hold on to that was real. So my dream before I met my ex-wife was to go to Tibet.
Did that kind of
cave. And then I met this beautiful goddess, and she just totally mesmerized me and took me off my path. So that's what happened to that decade. But
that's really interesting, and a lot of times relationships have the ability to kind of pull us away from our true mission. And was that kind of an impetus to pursue your study with a renewed passion? And was that when you decided you were going to go for a PhD or for a master's, for a higher degree?
That was always the plan. She just distracted me, or I allowed myself to be distracted.
Yes.
So
well, it's how perfectly human, as they say in nonviolent communication.
Mm-hmm.
One reason I noticed that is because a big area of interest for me is education, and uh, and I really find it inspiring that education is coming more and more to be seen as not something that you do when you're a kid at the beginning of your life and you get it over with, but it's something that we're all doing continuously all the time, and I'm always inspired by people's stories of like getting a PhD when they're 40 or something, you know, and just illustrating that it's not a phase in life. It's something that is a part of life for everybody who wants to be growing, and the world is kind of moving more in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So going back before that, obviously, all the work that you've done, you obviously have a passion for healing. Would that be fair to say?
That was the original passion. I was in the United States Navy during the Vietnam conflict, and my bunkmate had a knee pain, and he didn't want to go to sick bay because people are getting shot, you know, and wounded and bombed. So he's not about to go to sick bay and say, "Oh, my knee hurts," and they're like, "Get out of here with your knee." So somehow instinctively, I just rubbed my hands together and put my hands on his knee, and his knee pain went away. The next day, I woke up, there's two guys standing next to my bunk who had neck pain and shoulder pain. So I did the same thing. And then I got a reputation, and then I was Brother Love the healer. And then when I got out of the Navy, I went home to Philadelphia, and my friends thought I was weird, and they called me the woo-woo guy. And they're like, "Don't touch me, Mr. Woo-woo Man." And so that led me to go to massage school, and that led me to go to acupuncture school, and then that led me to go to Africa to study shamanism. So this whole energy medicine thing was a main driver, is to understand this gift that I had to heal and how to use it more effectively and more efficiently. So it wasn't just to do it, it was to understand how the process worked.
I could imagine having this experience where you just spontaneously, intuitively discovered you could affect this kind of healing would kind of create a strong thirst and curiosity to understand what was going on.
Sure.
So at that time when that happened, was that just completely new, completely spontaneous, intuitive thing that, I mean, have you had any kind of pointing in that direction?
Never thought of it, never occurred to me. It's just, you know, my bunkmate was in pain, he was embarrassed. So I just did it without thinking about it. And, you know, years later, I was like, what led me to that point? And I have no clue.
Well, I'm one thing that makes me curious about is you discovered this gift by accident. It just kind of happened. It doesn't that sort of thing doesn't happen to everyone, obviously. But my belief about humanity is that we're all natural teachers and we're all natural healers, and that everybody has gifts of that kind or of a comparable nature that can be discovered and developed. What's your perspective on that? Do you think it's like it's something that anybody can develop gifts like that, or are there just special people that are born with certain gifts?
Has the ability. I think 1 out of 4 have a super ability. So I think 1 out of 4 are absolute natural healers. But I think everyone has the capability of healing if they're nurtured and guided and what have you, because it's in our DNA. I mean, doctors are really a relatively new phenomenon since 1888, when they discovered blood circulation and antisepsis. Before that, everything was pretty much hit or miss, except for the ancient Egyptians. They had it right. But as far as Western is concerned, the average person growing up in a small village of 300 people, somebody had to take care of the aches and the pains and the digestive distress and the headaches and so forth and so on. So a body of knowledge was created way back when, and the healer archetype is not really well documented. The healer archetype is fairly new. So I think everybody was a healer back in the day, going back 5,000.
Yeah. And I get the impression that what you're saying is, with doctors being relatively new, and the idea of turning your health and the responsibility for your health and wellness over to somebody else. There were always healers as part of our species. But we all have it in our DNA that for most of our ancestral history, keeping yourself healthy and fit was your responsibility, and the idea of kind of turning it over to somebody else is a very new thing.
Well, there were shamans in the first civilized cultures had shamans, but a shaman initially was a weather magician. So he either made it rain or made it stop raining, or made the crops grow, or increased animal fertility or human fertility. The shaman as a personal healer or psychiatrist, if you will, again, is relatively recent, just the last few thousand years.
The psychiatrist parallel is really great, and it brings up some other questions, but I want to circle back around to you. You discovered this healing gift you had, and then you set out on this path. What were the factors that brought you in the direction specifically of Chinese medicine?
Okay.
Of all the healing paths and areas that are studied, what brought you in that particular direction?
Well, two of my uncles were Western medical doctors. And so the family assumption is that I was going to be a medical doctor. And I was not thrilled with Western medicine. I had an emergency appendectomy when I was 17. And the care that I received at Mercy Hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was so bad that I said, I'm never going to be a doctor. If this is how they butcher people, I don't want any part of it. So then I heard of Nixon went to China in 1974, and his press secretary had an emergency appendectomy. And he was awake, sipping water, cracking jokes with his translator, watching the operation from a mirror on the ceiling, and the only anesthesia he had was acupuncture. So since I had a similar condition, I was all ears. So I'm tracking this whole thing through the New York Times or whatever newspaper was printing anything about acupuncture. And then less than a year later, I tore my medial meniscus and my knee swelled up like a basketball. So for 3 weeks, I'm suffering, I'm limping around. And then somebody said, why don't you go to Chinatown and get some acupuncture? And then the light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, duh, why didn't I think of that before? So I took the subway to Chinatown. The guy stuck 3 needles in my knee. The pain went away. My knee shrunk literally within 10 minutes to normal size. So then I was like, you got to tell me how this works. You have to explain this to me. And I badgered the poor guy until he gave me the name of somebody who had a school. And then I ended up in Montreal Oscar Wexu, who was French-Romanian, opened a school in Montreal, and I was in his second graduating class. And that set me off on the acupuncture path. So at my graduating ceremony, Dr. Mike Smith, who is a psychiatrist who is running the Lincoln Hospital acupuncture program in the Bronx, he attended the graduation. So I met him, we exchanged numbers, and then I end up in New York and I go to see him for a job. And he says, well, George, there's a 6-month waiting list. You know, this is the only hospital-based acupuncture program and everybody wants to get here. And I just ignored that and just kept talking to him. And then 30 minutes later, he said, well, I just moved you up to the top of the list. And I'm like, what did I say to change your mind? So next thing you know, I'm working at Lincoln Hospital. And then I read a magazine article about Guo Lin, who had a particularly virulent form of uterine cancer. And they sent her home to die. So she went home, she was going through her grandfather's papers, she found these Qigong exercises. She started doing the exercises, and then 3 months later, she goes back to the hospital and said, you told me I was going to die of cancer. What's going on? And they're like, oh, your cancer's gone. What did you do? So she showed them the exercises, and they converted that hospital to a Qigong hospital. And eventually, there were 10 Qigong hospitals in China. So after I read that magazine article, then I was like, I got to find somebody to teach me Qigong. And one thing led to another. I found out about Master Li. I went to see him in Chinatown. And every time he gave a lecture, I went. So by the third lecture, he started to recognize me. And he says, why do you keep coming? And I said, because I want to learn from you. He said, why don't you just ask? And I was like, I'm scared. So he said, where's your clinic? He said, close your clinic, come work with me, I'll teach you. So that's what ended up happening. So for the next 6 years, I worked with Master Li every single day. And I saw him treat liver cancer and bone cancer and lung cancer and stomach cancer and lymphatic cancer. And I was fascinated that he did it so easily, so effortlessly. And at that point in my life, I was trying, I was efforting. And he's like, relax, take a breath. Look at your posture, watch your spine, sync your chi. So he was very gentle with me. And after about 3 or 4 years, it started to click. So after 6 years, his granddaughter came to visit from China. And then they started whispering in Chinese. And then I put 2 and 2 together and figured out I'm out of the picture. So that's when I picked up and moved to Florida. 4 years later, he calls me on the phone. The granddaughter got killed in a car accident. His wife had a stroke and was in a nursing home, and he wanted me to come back to New York. And I was like, Master Li, I've created a whole new life. I'm newlywed. I have a kid. And he says, you have to come back to New York. And he hung the phone up on me. So I was like, okay, the master calls. So I dropped everything. I flew to New York and I spent the next 3 weeks with him. And he transmitted his family lineage to me. And literally 90 days later, he dropped dead. So I went to the funeral. He did have other family members, but for some reason they were estranged. And so when I told them that I had received the family lineage, they were like, good for you, because we didn't want it. So evidently Master Li was a very tough character and very demanding. And so his family kind of rejected him. So I'm it. And he said to me, if you don't teach this, it will die, because this is all secret knowledge. So when Cohen wrote the Encyclopedia of Qigong, I sent him a copy of the exercises. And he wrote me a nice letter, which I saved for about 15 years. And he said, this is an authentic Qigong, because he's collected books all over. And he says, none of your exercises are in any of the books that I have. So that's when I knew I was onto something. So I started teaching very quietly back in 1999. And then in 2009, I started teaching more openly. And then 2014, that's when I ramped it up and I started traveling and teaching around the country. So I went to Italy. So I made this music video, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yeah, that was actually how I found out about you. It was years ago, and for some reason, I don't remember how. It was probably around the time it came out. I wanted to ask you about that video too, but I just started doing interviews in the last few months, and I don't know if this is a podcast or a web show. It's kind of both, neither. I'm not quite sure, but just recently that video floated back into my mind. I thought, oh yeah, I bet that guy would be great for an interview. So that was what brought me around. I'm sure there's a story you wanted to tell about that, but I'm actually curious about in your origin story sounds like it's all about the healing path. And what I'm curious about is a lot of people find their way to Qigong and to the healing arts through martial arts, and there's this long-standing historical intertwinement. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about just how you see the relationship between the healing arts and the martial arts and Qigong. What's the connection there?
Okay, that's an excellent question. I had done martial arts for about 16 years. And when I met Master Lee, he says, you can't spar anymore. And I said, why not? And he says, because you lose your life force. He said, you need to cultivate your Qi for healing and not for fighting. And I was...
So what point was this? You've been doing martial arts for 16 years, starting when?
When I was 16 years old.
Okay, so you actually were doing the martial arts as a teenager before you discovered the healing path.
Yeah, everybody was a Bruce Lee fan, you know, and so we took my garage, turned it into a dojo, and we had wood wrapped with rope, which we nailed to the wall, and then we punched the wall. And then we had the pulleys, because Bruce Lee had the pulleys. You kick your leg up real high. Then we had the punching bag that floated around so it would swing around. So you had to duck and kick and punch. Everything Bruce Lee did, we copied it. So we had a little neighborhood group trying to be Bruce Lee. And then when I moved to New York, I met these Goju guys. Ron Van Cleef, you may have heard of him, the Black Dragon. He played a lot of bad guys in Bruce Lee movies. So then I got on to Ron Van Cleef, Ron Davenport, Moses Powell. So these are all New York martial artists. And then when I went to acupuncture school, I kind of slacked off because you have to focus. And then after acupuncture school, I picked it back up again. But he said, you're going to lose your life force. So I stopped and I started cultivating. And then I found out that you don't have to stop. but everybody's different. And he assessed me that I was a little aggressive. So he wanted to tone my energy down. So he made me...
Did he also tell you you had to stop ejaculating?
He never said that. Because I was married. I was married when I met him, so he never said that.
Okay, I can just imagine the Sifu says, oh, you have to stop sparring. Well, okay, I think I can do that. And, oh, you have to stop ejaculating too. Oh, wait a minute.
What he said about ejaculation is that way back when there weren't a lot of nutrients, and that sex depletes magnesium and chromium and a lot of essential minerals, where in today's world we can take all the supplements we want. So we can constantly replace whatever's lost during ejaculation. So the whole myth about not ejaculating or ejaculating depleting your qi, you just replace the nutrients. So it's no longer a thing that ejaculation depletes. You just take.
Well, that's really interesting for me to hear, because I would expect a Qi Gong master to be saying that it's not just the biochemical component of it, but there's also like an energetic component of it as well. That isn't just a matter of replacing nutrients. But you're saying that he said it's really just a trace mineral thing that is not an issue when you have a diet that has plenty of nutrients.
Okay, I gave you the really short answer. It's a really long answer, which would involve into secret oral teaching, which would involve you enrolling in the sexual Qigong course.
Okay.
So there's no fast answer to ejaculate or not ejaculate. Okay.
Right. So you have a sexual Qigong course. That's one of your courses.
Yes.
Is that are your courses are on your website, right? Is that where people would find that kind of thing?
What I'm doing now is putting the courses online. Before, I was trying to follow the model that Master Lee was. You have to contact me personally. You have to come to me, because he was deathly afraid of putting his stuff on video, being recorded, because the communists could take anything you say and rewrite it or reconfigure it to say the opposite of what you said. So he didn't want to be recorded, neither audio nor video. He was deathly afraid of it. So
unfortunately, the world is changing, and that actually has been an issue for a lot of the history of Qigong and martial arts generally is secretism and sort of defensiveness. But one of the bigger topics I hope we get into at some point is how the world is transforming. Before opening that up quite yet, so you're where are your courses online? Are they on your main website?
I am working with the Shaolin Temple in San Francisco, and they are going to be hosting all of my courses on their website. And he's trying to send me a Facebook message right now.
Well, your main website is Blue Dragon Qigong Academy, right?
That is correct.
That's so Blue Dragon Qigong Academy.com. That's where you do your Qi healing teacher training.
Mm-hmm. And lovechinesemedicine.com.
Love Chinese Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
.com. Okay, I'll be sure to add that to the show notes as well. And would that be where people would be able to at least be directed or find their way to your online courses?
Well, the best way to reach me is by email, and write a short couple of sentences about what you're interested in, and then I will direct you. My calendar changes every 3 or 4 weeks. I'm teaching in Oakland, California, May 2nd through the 9th. I'm teaching a Chinese medicine exercise physiology course. Then Mother's Day weekend, I'm teaching at the Shakti Fest in Joshua Tree, which is in Southern California. I'll be the only Qigong instructor at a yoga festival. Then the first week of June, I'll be in Atlanta. And then the last week of June, I'll be at the Maui Chi Fest in Hawaii. And then the first 2 weeks of July, I'll be in New York, teaching in several places.
So you said the best thing for people to do is just to email you and let you know what they're interested in.
Right. So there's okay. So first of all, there's martial Qigong, Tai Chi, Bagua, Xing Yi, Yichuan. Then there's medical Qigong, which I teach, and then there's spiritual Qigong or spiritual alchemy, which some people call Kundalini, Taoist Kundalini Yoga. So I primarily focus on the medical Qigong. However, if you have an interest in the spiritual alchemy, then I will teach you that. And there's all kinds of martial applications to the medical Qigong. So this past summer, I was in Sumatra at a Silat summer camp. So it was a 7-day martial arts camp. I got talked into it. My friend paid my way to get there. And I wasn't real enthused about it. I had planned to, stand in the back of the room. Well, the first day I got punched in the face. The second day I got kicked in the groin. The third day I said, I'm sort of liking this, because it rekindled into me that old martial feeling I had. So I went to the master, Eddie, and I started talking to him, and he said, the Indonesian system includes medical Qigong in Silat. And I would like for you to come to Indonesia and study with me for a year. Because I don't know what you know about Qigong, but I know what I know about Qigong. Qigong movie. And then she recommended this guy to do the soundtrack. And it turned out he was somebody that I already knew. And then he said, well, let's just make a music video. And then I wrote the lyrics. YouTube took it down. And then I had to fight with YouTube. And then I put it back up again. And Wudong. So I went to China to teach. I got an invitation to Toronto, Canada. I got an invitation to Rome, invitation to London. So because of that video, it's gotten me all these invitations to teach all over the world. And the Shaolin people and the Wudong people are more in affinity with my Qigong. It seems like, because they're the ones who keep inviting me. I get lots of invitations from Shaolin because their Qigong needs to be developed. I don't know. But that's where I'm headed next, to the Shaolin Temple in San Francisco.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. So I kept talking while you took a little break. So, because I
noticed that.
So I figured the camera was still going.
Yeah, I'll catch it on the replay. I did hear you saying that your epic Qigong rap video got taken off of YouTube at first.
Yeah, they took it down. I had about the response. So, but people loved it. And I still get emails every week from some teacher who teaches it to her kids, to her after-school program, to juvenile delinquents, to recovering drug addicts. So it's still working.
Yeah, it's amazing to put something like that out into the world and have it go on helping people.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, the age-old technology for doing that is writing a book, and you've written a lot of books. Why do you really feel it's necessary to write, 10 books? Couldn't you have just been okay with 5 or 6? Like, what's your drive to keep creating? And I would ask you, how do you maintain the energy output? But obviously Qigong. But what's your drive to write so many books?
Okay. Human beings are complex creatures. And let's say you wanted to learn tennis. So you have to learn how to serve. You have to learn how to return a serve. You have to learn how to hit backhand. You have to learn how to hit forehand. You have to learn how to charge the net. You have to learn how to run backwards and not go outside the line. There's so many aspects. How could you write one book about tennis? Okay. So ear reflexology, foot reflexology. If you go to a bookstore there's 20, 30, 40 books on the foot. And what makes one book have different information than the other book? They're all about the foot. There's 20 books on ear reflexology. There's at least 700 books on massage. So how could you just write one book? You know, you'd have to explore the full subject matter. Okay. So I wrote a book on fasting, and then people said, well, what do I eat? So then I wrote a recipe book. And well, what about food combining? So then I had to write a book about food therapy. And then they said, well, how do we self-heal? You're too far away. I can't get to you. So I said, well, just massage your ears. So then I wrote the ear book. And then they wanted the Qigong book. So I just wrote out the exercises. And they're like, dull, boring. We want meat. Tell us stories. So I'm like, gee whiz. So then I had to write a book about my experience with Master Li. And so that, you know, the questions drove me to write the next book. It wasn't that I wanted to write the book, is that people kept asking questions. And I don't like repeating myself 100 times, so I write the book. So here, read the book. So that doesn't
pull effect, push effect.
Say that again?
It's more of a pull effect than a push effect, going with the flow of nature.
Exactly. So I just completed a book that I haven't published yet, and it's the scientific explanation of Qigong. Because people said, well, how do you know Qigong actually works? We just have to take your word for it. So that pushed me to write the book on the scientific evidence that proves that Qigong is effective. So now I got to figure out what to do with that book. And now I'm editing my original Qigong book. And then I'm editing another book on Qigong and the emotions. How anger causes the muscles to contract and depression causes the muscles to be flaccid. So anger and depression are part of the same liver complex. So how can Qigong teach both ends of the spectrum of the liver? And then how does that affect digestion, and how does that affect the flesh and the fat and weight gain? So what can Qigong do to address that? And then
the emotional component is really huge, and just in really in all areas of medicine, I think that's something that's coming to be more recognized.
Mm-hmm.
And the need for not just physical healing, but also emotional healing and emotional regulation, how that affects all other aspects of life.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of your new book? The one on
the scientific
the one on the scientific basis of Qigong.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
That is the name of it. It's the science behind Qigong.
Science behind Qigong. Right. And you said you've written it but haven't published it yet. So do you have an expectation of when it'll be available?
Probably September. It's been edited, so now we're doing the illustrations. So so I have to hire an illustrator to make the illustrations for the book. So that's what we're working on now. But the writing is all
that's really, really exciting to me, because I have my academic background is in math and physics, and I approach this area of Qigong and Tai Chi and martial arts from a very scientific perspective. And I recognize that. Well, actually, I want to say that I don't think that what people have said to you, that we just have to take your word. How do we know it works? We just have to take your word for it. Is really fair, because they don't really just have to take your word for it. They can try it and see for themselves. But I recognize that a preponderance of scientific evidence is one of the factors that sways public opinion, and that moves thought, and that fuels acceptance and awareness. So even even though I feel like, I don't need any more evidence for myself, I just think it's really great that so much scientific work is being done, and more, and being done more and more, because there's that's part of sort of absorbing the knowledge into Western culture.
Mm-hmm.
So
go ahead.
I should have done this at the beginning. I want to do it now just to be safe. Do a time check. What's your hard deadline for us to be finished by?
I was supposed to make a phone call at 10:30, and it turns out that my phone died. So I have a commitment at noon, and it's going to take me an hour to get there. But somebody was supposed to pick me up, and yep, phone died. So let me plug my phone in. Okay. So we got about 10 more minutes.
Okay, that's great to know. There's a lot more stuff I'd like to dig into with you, but I always like to leave stuff on the table too, and leave the potential open for future conversation. There's a lot more I want to ask you about the future of Qigong, and Qigong in sort of personal development and performance enhancement, as opposed to just health and wellness, and how that's contributing to the role of changing the world. But specifically on that topic, how the way that Qigong is changing the world, there's an event coming up. I'm sure you've heard of it, World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. It's the last Saturday in April every year.
Right.
So I'm curious if you are involved with that. Are you organizing an event? Are you doing anything special for World Tai Chi Day?
I was planning to do something myself, and then I got an invitation to San Mateo, California, by David Way. So he's got the Wudong Cultural Center, so he's going to do something out there. So I'm flying out to be with him and his students.
So you'll be participating in World Tai Chi in San California?
Right, that's in the Bay Area. That's about 40 minutes south of San Francisco.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. I just get so inspired by that event every year, to see how many different communities there are around the world, and to see how many people can be reached, because awareness is the foundation of change, and people can't practice Qigong if they're unaware of it, basically. So
Exactly.
I'm involved with organizing an event in Southern California. That's where my home base is. So I'm helping to organize a World Tai Chi Day event in San Diego. Really excited about that. And I'm also expecting to be participating in a World Tai Chi and Qigong Day event here in Nepal, in Kathmandu. There's an organization that's been organizing them for 8 or 9 years, and I've been invited to participate with that. So I'm really looking forward to that day. That's coming up in just about 2 weeks.
Okay. So you're going to fly back to Southern California?
No, I'm going to be here in Nepal on World Tai Chi Day and probably participating in the event here. Eventually, I'm sure I'll fly back to Southern California. That's where I consider my home base to be, and I'm not intending to live in Nepal forever. So sooner or later, I'm sure I'll find my way back there, but no definite plans yet.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that if people want to connect with you, they have a way to do that. And because you're teaching so much stuff, and you've got a few websites and a few pages on Facebook. I'm sure your books are all on Amazon. But what would be the best thing for people to do if they want to connect with you or learn more about what you do and enroll in your courses?
Like I said, the best way to reach me is by email, GEO love49@gmail.com, or go to the Blue Dragon Qigong Academy website and contact me from there, because then I know that you're a potential student, and then we can identify the area that you want to study, because the umbrella of information of Qigong is so huge that we have to start somewhere. So there's internal Qi, which we call Neidan, and then there's external Qigong, which we call Waidan. And then the Waidan includes weighted balls, weighted baton, weighted staff. We have a 7-foot staff that's filled with water. And so we learn how to do staff training. Of course, we start with a wooden staff that's 40 inches. And then we work our way up to the 6-foot and then the 7-foot. So it's really fascinating. Then with the medical Qigong, there's basically 14 exercises. So you learn the 14, then you learn 8 different meditations that are all moving. So none of these are sitting meditations. These are all moving meditations. Then we learn 8 breathing exercises, how to cultivate Qi. So with the internal, you get the Qigong instructor. And then with the external, you get the Qi fitness trainer. So those are your 2 entry-level trainings. Then we go into Chinese exercise physiology. So we learn how to do heart rate, blood pressure, BMI, blood sugar. We learn ankle and wrist blood pressure as opposed to brachial blood pressure. We're able to identify where blood clots are way better than Western medicine. So we can prevent cardiac ischemia, cardiac embolism, pulmonary ischemia, pulmonary embolism, brain aneurysms, and stroke with Qigong and acupressure. And that's all part of the Chinese exercise physiology. And then, Chinese exercise physiology, right. Then there's Qigong physiotherapy, where we actually learn how to prescribe the exercises. And then we can rehab hips and knees and elbows and wrists and ankles just with exercise and acupressure. Again, way more effective than Western medicine with muscle relaxers and painkillers. And yeah, so it's really an intense program. So you have to be clear about what it is that you want to study. And then we go on to learn about the emotions. We learn about the ear. We learn about food. We learn about herbs. And that's why there's all these different books, because each one of those is a separate subject.
So I don't want to keep you from your commitments, but I do want to take the opportunity to say thank you for all the work that you're doing and all of the great value that you're adding to the world in helping to raise awareness about Qigong and the related healing arts, and how much you're doing to teach people and also to inspire people to seek out this knowledge. And I also want to say thank you for being here today. Really had a lot of fun, and I I know that our viewers and listeners have gotten a lot of value from this, and I know there's so much more to explore, but I really think this is great and appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me, Dane. We can explore other topics as you are interested.
That's really great to hear. I'm looking forward to it already.
Okay.
All right. Have a great morning and rest of your day, Dr. Love, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.